Okay, so in this video, I'm going to explain to you guys how you can prove to yourself and everybody else that the Earth isn't actually a spinning ball, but more like a flat stationary plane. Now, this is all just my opinions. I'm not trying to preach to anybody. I just want people to go and investigate this for themselves, because I really feel like there's a question there that needs to be, kind of dealt with, because if we're on a ball that's spinning, that kind of puts us at just a random corner of the universe, and nothing special really. But if we're on a flat stationary plane, it makes us more special, and it opens up other possibilities. Perhaps they could be hiding more land. There could literally be land beyond the North Pole or beyond the South Pole, as it states in a book called Worlds Beyond the Poles, that they found land beyond the North and South Pole. Now, I don't know if that's a credible source of information, but anyway, so that's really the kind of reason why they would basically, do it, because if they want us to believe that we're on a globe, then that kind of makes people into sort of nihilistic people, because they don't see us as being special, or created, if you want to, put it that way, because, I'm not saying it's this one God, this singular God, but, there could be multiple gods, there could be, it could be something else, it could be a simulation, I don't know, but all I know, and a lot of other people know, that we aren't just an accident, we're not just a random speck of dust. And the flat earth really to me proves that, because it does away with all the Big Bang and the modern cosmology that's been force-fed to people through education and mass media programming, such as television, movies, when people go to cinema, they see on the big screens, the globe, right in their faces, it's just mass brainwashing, isn't it? It's mass indoctrination, it's really all this, propaganda that's been, why would they need to put, globes in everything, why would, what's so special? Yeah, it's our home, but why are they, it's like they're trying to brainwash people with it and indoctrinate people by, kind of ramming it down their throats from when they're little. The first thing you see on a, desk is a, globe, and they'll be like, what's that? And then they show you that's your home, and obviously they'll sort of, you'll ask questions probably, and they'll be like, well, how do I, how am I standing upside down to someone, on the opposite side of the globe? And they'll be like, oh, it's because of gravity. Well, and then they'll just be like, okay, fair enough. But lots of very intelligent people, lots of people with credentials, actually, people with degrees in science, mathematics, and, what have you, are challenging these theories, because they've never actually been settled. And even the scientists will admit that such theories aren't actually 100% proven. They have to put in, these placeholders to try and, fill in the gaps of where their theories kind of fall short of being able to be proven, because so they have to invent things like dark matter, because with the theory of gravity, where, a mass attracting a mass is kind of, the basis of, their theory of gravity, where, mass is attracted mass. Well, but they say that they need, this dark matter. It's kind of supposed to be this thing that's holding the universe together and making, all the orbits stay in alignment, and not kind of go crazy, and, which, thinking about it, is just such a a crazy notion. And if you was to Occam's razor it, you would just think, well, the simplest explanation is that, well, if we're on a flat plane and on a flat stationary plane, then there is no need for gravity. It's actually explained by mass and density and buoyancy. Well, it's actually density and buoyancy. That's the the reason why heavier things will fall and lighter things will rise up. Because, well, is helium an anti-gravity device because it defies gravity because it goes up? But people like well, it's buoyant force. That's but I just don't buy that. Gravity is what's causing, oceans to stick around a spinning ball. And it's not just spinning, but whizzing and doing all these other, acrobatics through space. And it's such a convoluted theory that, even people, with degrees and stuff, they don't understand it. They're questioning it and thinking, well, is it really legitimate? Is it, and and gravity is really the god in the heliocentric globe model, because without it you couldn't have a spinning ball Earth, because we know that natural physics tells us that there is an up and down, and that water finds its own level. It will go from the its highest point to its lowest point, and it will lie flat, okay? It doesn't curve, it doesn't have a convex or a concave surface. Yeah, we get raindrops, of course, surface tension is going to cause, to be kind of, in some, somewhat kind of, only up to, a certain scale, it will be, have a convexity to it. But as the water collects, it starts to form flat. And we know that water needs to be contained as well. If you took the sides away of a container, it would just spill away. So water can't support itself. It needs a container to stop it from collapsing. The container is what's keeping it together. But people don't really understand that. It's because they say, oh, it's gravity that's pulling it towards the center of the Earth. But they claim that the center of the Earth is magnetized. It has this magnetic core, which we know that magnets, certain metals, they lose their magnetic property when heated beyond a certain temperature. It's like as they're heated, higher than a certain temperature, they will lose their magnetic properties. And that means that the Earth can't have a magnetic core, and besides, how do they know what's going on at the Earth's core when the furthest anyone's drilled is 8 miles? They can come up with theories and stuff, but if someone's never drilled more than 8 miles down, then that's a very small. That's like they claim that the Earth's radius is almost 4,000 miles, so that's like 1/500th of the Earth's radius that they've actually gone down. So it's really just speculation when you think about it, and they can hypothesize on what's down there, but yeah, there's lots of other ways that you can actually prove that it's flat. Well, so if you discount gravity and you understand that the natural physics of water is to be flat, then you've already proven it right there. And they'll say, well, we've proven gravity by hanging 2 lead balls, Cavendish experiment, which is never, which didn't have any kind of one witness in it, and they claim to have better experiments now to be able to prove it, yet they're still theorizing on, how and why, objects fall to the ground. But again, density and buoyancy, and also electromagnetism / static electricity, probably a more probable explanation than the crazy notion of, mass attracting mass due to, the Einsteinian, gravity, and, the Newtonian gravity, whatever, well, it weren't Einsteinian, but Newtonian physics that they still claim now today that has been proven and what have you, when, we're not saying that, an object doesn't fall to the ground. Of course it is going to do, but we're saying that the reason for it falling to the ground has never been proven to be this, warping of space-time as they're claiming it to be nowadays. And it gets so convoluted and so just, that's what it is. It's just so, just so baffling to a lot of people, and they'll just kind of give up kind of looking more into it. I think it might be done that way on purpose because they want to baffle people, so then they'll just think, well, scientists, they're all knowledgeable people, they know what they're talking about. I can't understand it because I'm just an idiot because I have not studied that, so therefore, I I just have to accept it. So that's a faith, it's a religion. So the next thing to focus on is actually, so we've talked about the natural physics of water. To back this up, well, we have observations that are done across water. I've actually, seen stuff, out at the sea that should actually be hidden by the curvature of the earth. Now, I haven't filmed this stuff, but people should just go out and do it. I don't need to film it. I've seen it with my own eyes, but people should maybe go out and, have a look at it themselves and, find a spot where, say, like you want to go out and check if, say a ship is actually going over a curve, as they claim that they do now. There's actually a formula for how much things should be dropping away, which is, and this is something that they've come up with, the heliocentrists have come up with. They most likely believe in the heliocentric, ball Earth model, and they say it's, 8 inches per mile squared. So now when people hear the 8 inches thing, well, they might forget to square the mile. So it's 8 inches, and then at the second mile it's 32 inches. So already it's jumped to, 4 times as much. So it'll, twice the distance, it'll jump 4 times as much. So it gets really drastic really quickly. So at 10 miles it's actually 66 feet. And then at 20 miles it's 266 feet. At 30 miles it's 600 feet. And you can go, 50 miles, it's 1,666 feet. At 100 miles, it's actually 1.25 miles. At 200 miles, it's 5 miles. So when you're getting up to those kinds of mileage, you really should be expecting a pretty darn drastic curve. You're talking about degrees of arc at that point, that it should be curving. So, and, it should be curving at about 1 degree about, every 69 miles. And you can see things, that should be, disappearing over that curvature, and beyond the horizon, things should be dropping away. So what you do is and there's sites that do this, it factors in your height above sea level, and then, so then it kind of knocks that down a little bit, and then obviously beyond the horizon, it sort of, is the actual drop off, because if we were on a bowl, you'd kind of be looking over a hill first, and then it would start to curve down the way, but the horizon seems to always rise up to about the same height, depending on atmospheric conditions, of course, which isn't really possible on the ball Earth. Given the curvature of the Earth, often the horizon will be 30 or 50 miles away, which should be 600 feet or 1,666 feet of drop, so it should be that much lower. So when you look at it, it shouldn't be rising up to your eye level, but it wouldn't quite rise up to your eye level even on a flat Earth, because of course the atmospheric conditions are gonna affect that. But people are finding that it's always maintaining that same level regardless of altitude, and going back to things are visible that should be beyond that horizon, so that it should be getting exponentially lower beyond that horizon, because the parabolic arc, and there's observations that people have done that are well over 100 miles away. There's one, in fact, actually the longest one is 273 miles actually, which is about 440 kilometers. Now, while it is quite a high height, and it's also looking at quite a high peak, at such a distance, the tip of the peak should actually be about 800 meters below the horizon, according to the Earth Curve calculator, which is about half a mile. So, and also you're not just seeing the tip top of it, but you're seeing quite a bit of it. But people will say, well, how come you're able to see more from higher? But of course, this is merely perspective that's kind of affecting your ability to see long distances, because there's always going to be something in your way, whether it be waves, whether it be mountains. It could be just be the atmosphere that's blocking your vision, and it changes quite a bit from sea level to when you're going up a hill or a mountain somewhere. So yeah, people need to understand that. So that's why we get the horizon, because because obviously things get smaller and smaller, so it appears to the ground appears to ramp up, or the sea appears to ramp up, and the sky appears to get lower, and they converge, and that's why you get the horizon line. And you can't see beyond that because, whatever's, in the foreground is going to block it out, whether it be the atmosphere or whether it be waves in the foreground that are going to block out things in the background. But as you get up higher above that, to a few hundred meters or whatever, you can see, things that are a long way away. And there's lots of evidence of that, lots of photographs. I recommend a site called Beyond Horizons. It, shows a lot of photographs of things that are, that should be obscured by the curvature of the Earth. And there's a famous photograph of, Lake Michigan from, I think it's 56 miles. And, and even given the, altitude that it was took from, it should have been pretty much all swallowed up by the curvature, and and even if a little bit of it should have been visible, it shouldn't have been as much visible as it were. So that kind of proves, in itself that, it's not going over the curvature, and they'll come up with the excuse, oh, it's a mirage, but, we know that mirages will look distorted, they'll look wavy, but it looks pretty much, like it didn't have any distortion to it, like it was just, like we were just seeing far distances, at our, on our flat plane, and so, and of course we have, long areas of, flat land, salt flats. The Bolivia salt flats is a very good example. It's over 4,000 square miles of flat, salt flats, and it rains, and it gets covered in about an inch of water, something like that. So you'd expect there would be like a hump in the middle of it, because apparently the widest point is about 100 miles. So you expect over about a quarter of a mile hump in the middle of it, where you expect about, because 50 miles from center to the edges would give you about 1,666 feet of bulge in the center. But people have found that they're able to see things at the other side of this, because it's it's quite a high altitude. It's almost 12,000 feet high, and you're not looking over like lots of ocean and things where there's lots of moisture and things like that. It's a clear view, and it's one of the best proofs that we're on a flat Earth. Also, there's a lake in Russia which freezes over, and it's 395 miles long. There should be 19.7 miles of curvature from one side to the other. However, it's never been proven to exist. So people will say, well, the Earth's too big, but those are the people that aren't actually aware of the actual mathematics that, of the 8 inches per mile squared, because if they were aware of that, they would probably start questioning it, because even if the Earth were a lot bigger, then the curvature were a lot smaller, you'd still be able to detect it. Even if it was like 2 inches per mile squared, you would still, over a certain distance, be able to detect it. But what people are finding that the results are, falling way short of what you would expect. And I don't know if it's, completely flat. I've considered the possibility it could be a much larger bowl, and we can't detect the curvature, even high up when you're looking at, far distances. But obviously that would bring gravity back into it, which has never really been proven to exist, unless we were living on some kind of honeycomb where it's like we're on a football, but each patch of it's got like a cell membrane, like a dome over it, and that could be possible. There could be something going on inside of it, and that's what they're trying to hide, possibly. It's just an idea, but there's not really any proof to back that up. So there's lots of other things you can talk about, the sun's reflection on the water, and it's it comes up to your feet, when the sun's going down, it's not reflecting up a curve, because if it was doing that, it wouldn't come up anywhere near as far. And to me, it's a very good example of flatness over, large distances, pretty much, of course, railguns, they, don't go over, 6,000 feet of curve, whatever it is, well, some, they're supposed to be going over like 6,666 feet of curve, I think it is, and 100 miles. Apparently, some got to like 125 miles or something. So yeah, but they'll say, oh, it's a gravity pulling it round or something like that. Of course, if we were on a spinning ball, you would, planes would have to be flying faster when they're going with the spin of the Earth to get to the destination, and it would be different depending on whereabouts you are, because the rate, the speed of which it would be rotating would be different, because the equator, it would be like 1,000 miles an hour, but at the poles it would be 0, because it wouldn't be having to rotate as great of a distance to come back round where it started. But at the equator, it would be having to do a greater distance to get back around where it started. But where's the proof of any of this actually happening? I mean, we don't feel the motion of the Earth, and we're considered as retards or stupid just for thinking that the Earth is exactly how we experience it. People will say, well, I've seen the curvature of the Earth with my own eyes from a plane, but you got to be aware that they do use the windows that they have in them can kind of create this bulge, this artificial bulge, and you'll get the scientists that will say, well, you couldn't see it up there anyway. And there's lots of shots being took from planes that show a completely flat horizon with no curvature whatsoever. Under any scrutiny, it's not possible to find. And again, high altitude balloon footage from 3 times higher than that still doesn't show any detectable curve. The only time you would think it would is when they use a fisheye lens, and it's pretty obvious on Felix Baumgartner's jump. However, just before he leaves just before he gets out, he when at 128,000 feet, you could actually see the horizon was flat and it was at eye level. So those two things do not match, because one's shown a curve and one didn't, and that's obviously because of the fisheye effect, which when you angle it down, it's going to show it convex, so when you angle it up, it's going to show it concave. So yeah, that's why it can, because they use fisheye lenses, that's why it looks like a curve, and you wouldn't have such a drastic curve at that height anyway. And same thing could be being done on the ISS as well, which shows pretty much the same curve. So, and people be like, oh, what about satellites then? Well, we never really hear anything about crashes or anything like that happens. Well, apparently, one of them, crashed to the ground, but they should be, constantly, crashing, into each other if there's all them satellites up there. And I'm not denying that there aren't satellites up there, but I won't say there's as many as we're being told. They might not be being used for what we're being told they're being used for anyway. And when people say they've seen a satellite, it's really kind of hard to tell if it actually is one, and well, you probably wouldn't be able to see it anyway, because if the satellites are 100 miles high, and they're apparently supposed to be the size of a bus or something like that, then how come a plane, which is much bigger, can be barely seen a few miles up, 5 miles up, it's just a little dot in the sky. And so with satellites, we can get our communications from ground-based signals that we that's where we're getting our signals from ground, which is towers, cables, fiber optic, what have you. And they say 99% of it's all ground based. There could also be there could be balloons going up, and that could be those could be receiving signals. You could be receiving signals from from those as well. Not necessarily just satellites. I'm not saying saying that they don't exist, but it's just something to take into account. Now, people will say, well, there'd have to be so many people in on the secret. Well, a lot of the other manufacturing companies, for building rockets, building satellites and stuff like that, aren't really in on it. They're just building stuff and they don't know what it's going to be used for, because of the compartmentalization of the companies. So they're none the wiser. They just assume that it's going to be going to good use. And most scientists, most of the lower level scientists are probably not in on it either. And some of them probably wouldn't talk about it anyway because they probably, lose their jobs or whatever. So, if they are, if they do know about it, then they probably fear losing their jobs, and even if they probably think, if they talk about it, then they're just going to get ridiculed anyway. So they probably just don't talk about it. Actually, there was recently a Russian physicist who declared that the Earth was actually flat, and apparently he said something that the maths that they used are actually, kind of manipulated to kind of fit the globe model. Don't quote me on that, but you should go research these things for yourself. So there are a lot of people talking about it. Celebrities are talking about it. And it's quite a hot topic to be talking about, and it's something that people should be talking about because there is really a question to be asked. So if you think I'm retarded, fine. I don't care. But you should just go and investigate this for yourself. Go look. There's lots of information out there. There's millions and millions of videos that are kind of going on about this topic, and So let's talk about the motion of the Earth, the supposed motion of the Earth. Well, there was experiments done in in history, such as Airy's failure, which failed to detect the Earth's motion. That's why they call it Airy's failure. And so you can go and research this, for yourself. I don't need to go into it or anything. So yeah, go and research it for yourself. Same. There's another one, Michelson Morley. Again, go research these things for yourself. Thing with Michelson Morley that Einstein came along to try and discredit it, and they were trying to prove the existence of the ether, but Einstein was going to try and discredit the ether by saying it's all relative, and that was his that was his sort of invention, whatever, but kind of it's not provable or disprovable, and so therefore it's not really scientific because the thing with real science is it has to be provable or disprovable, and if it's none of those, then it's not scientific. It's just the people who believe in it. It's just a faith because it's not based in any real empirical observable, measurable, testable, repeatable science. And when people say, oh well, the flat Earth's not scientific, well, you actually know what real science is about. So anyway, that we can go on all day about the proofs and what have you. So let's talk about the sun. So, how does, the sun, or why does the sun set on the flat Earth? And that's, perspective, the sun will get lower, 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 and then it will obviously get obscured by the horizon, and people mistake that for the curvature, but it's actually, what happens is, as it gets to the horizon, there's an atmospheric lensing effect, which magnifies the sun. That's why it appears huge at the horizon. It magnifies, it distorts, and you lose the bottom of it. Now there's a video called atmospheric lensing that somebody called Rob Skiba put out, and he demonstrated it, and this is demonstrable by everybody. It's an actual real scientific experiment that people can actually do it and see how you can lose the bottom of things in the distance, and that's why you lose the bottoms of buildings perhaps, but you're not losing as much of it as you're supposed to be, due to the alleged curvature. You should be losing a lot more, so it's not really consistent at all. So the sun in the flat Earth model is actually a lot closer and a lot smaller, and that's how the day and night works. So as the sun sets, sets, and the light seems to actually kind of, move with the sun. It kind of, moves away. It's not because we're, rotating away from it, but the sun's actually moving away from us. So what else can we talk about? So, I can talk about how, of course, time zones. If the sun is say a lot closer and it's and it's moving over the flat Earth, it will move from the tropics. So move from Tropic of Cancer to the equator down to the Tropic of Capricorn every year, and it'll go through cycles. And some believe it could be a circle and it's circling around. Some people believe it's going like a loop. It goes from one side to the other, and then it goes back to the beginning, and that's going to be hard for people to wrap their head around, because if you're new to this information, it's really probably hard to grasp. But obviously the circular one is a lot easier to grasp, and it explains pretty well about how the seasons work, and but I'm not tied down to a particular map or model because I haven't mapped it all out myself, and I'll admit I don't know. So this whole sticks and shadows experiment, and they about 2,000 years ago supposedly proved that the Earth's a sphere, and the problem is that because they were claiming that it was measuring the circumference of the Earth, and the curvature of to determine the curvature of the Earth. But you already have to assume that the sun is way, way away. But if it's a lot closer, then it mathematically works the same in the flat Earth. So it's an example of how maths can actually be used to deceive people, because it's if you're starting from an assumption then that's wrong, then it's flawed from the get-go, basically. So basically the sun and moon are a lot closer, or at least I think they're a lot closer than we're being told, and they don't just appear the same size in the sky by a random coincidence. So when you see eclipses, they're a perfect puzzle piece fit. To me, is beyond coincidence. It can't be a coincidence. It's proof of some kind of intelligent design, I reckon. Whether you want to believe it's flat or not, but I feel like that's an anomaly of the heliocentric model. It's just too much of a coincidence. And to believe that the stars are, light years away, yet we can see them with our naked eye, and this most of all is because they're so big. And they come up with excuses, and that's why they say, well, we can never see any parallax in them or whatever, and Polaris is fixed because it's so far away and all this stuff, and the star trails are like they use that as a proof for the ball. Well, we don't really know what the stars are, but they're assuming that they're this distance away, and that we're orbiting around the sun and all that, and if we're on a ball, then you see them going in opposite directions in north and south, and it makes sense, but there are explanations on the flat Earth as well which you want to really look into, and I don't have all the answers, and I'll admit I don't know everything, but I've seen too much evidence of it being a flat stationary plane that I kind of have to just think, well, I don't know, so I can't really use that as a proof of a ball Earth, because looking up in the sky doesn't really prove the shape of the Earth we were upon. So so you have to completely ditch the whole idea of the heliocentric model, Big Bang, because everything's probably a lot nearer than what we're being told, and that we could be enclosed in a dome. It could be a ceiling that is parallel, and there could be more land out there, more continents. I mean, that could be a good reason to lie to us. NASA gets all this money to fix space, and it could also be trying to hoard resources from us, free energy that they want us to pay for because we can get them more money, and there's just different reasons why they could be lying to us. I think it's a really important topic to be talking about. And hopefully I've covered quite a few proofs in this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And also I do hangouts quite often as well, so you can come in there and I can deal with it live. If you've got any questions that you want me to answer, basically. And we also talk about other stuff as well. So yeah, make sure to share this out. Let's get it to go a bit viral, shall we? And share it with all your friends and family. Let's get people talking about this stuff. I think it's really important that we do have people talk about this. Let's get it out there, guys, because I feel like that there's a deception going on, and even if there isn't, it's an important topic to be raised for the scientific community. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I will chat to you guys soon. So till then, bye for now.